What if I told you the secret to keeping beef fresh for months has nothing to do with electricity and everything to do with centuries-old wisdom? While modern refrigerators break down and grocery bills skyrocket, Amish families have been preserving meat so perfectly that a single technique could save you hundreds of dollars every year. Traditional salt preservation. When it comes to keeping beef fresh without electricity, salt has been the go-to method for centuries. The Amish have perfected this technique, passing down their knowledge through generations. Their approach isn't complicated, it's brilliantly simple. Different types of salt produce different results. The Amish typically prefer coarse sea salt or kosher salt over table salt. Why? Table salt contains additives like iodine and anti-caking agents that can affect flavor and preservation quality. Sea salt, with its mineral content intact, creates a more complex flavor profile while still preserving the meat effectively. The process begins with trimming excess fat from the beef. Then comes the crucial part, applying salt generously to every surface. For each pound of beef, about half a cup of salt is needed. The meat is placed in a non-metallic container, usually wooden or ceramic, and stored in a cool place. Every few days, the beef must be flipped and drained of any liquid that accumulates. What makes this method so effective? Salt draws moisture out from the meat, creating an environment where harmful bacteria simply cannot survive. It's food science at its most basic and most reliable. Properly salt-cured beef can last over 2 years without refrigeration, outlasting most modern preservation methods. Common mistakes include using too little salt, which allows bacteria to grow, or rushing the process, leading to incomplete preservation. The Amish approach emphasizes patience. Proper curing takes weeks, not days. They have a saying, "Rush the salt, spoil the meat." Anyone who's tried shortcuts has learned this lesson the hard way. Smoking techniques. Walk into an Amish community during autumn, and you'll likely catch the rich, aromatic scent of smoke wafting from simple wooden structures. Before refrigeration existed, smoke was humanity's preservation superstar. The Amish haven't abandoned this time-tested method. They've refined it. Smoke works its preservation magic in 2 ways. First, it dehydrates the meat, removing moisture bacteria need to multiply. Second, the compounds in wood smoke, particularly phenols and formaldehyde, act as natural preservatives, coating the meat's surface with protective antimicrobial agents. Not all wood is created equal in the smoking world. The Amish carefully select their smoking woods based on both availability and flavor profile. Hickory remains a favorite for its strong, bacon-like flavor and excellent preservation properties. Applewood imparts a milder, slightly sweet character, while oak provides a middle ground option. They avoid resinous woods like pine or spruce, which release unpleasant-tasting compounds when burned. Building a simple smoking setup doesn't require advanced engineering. Many Amish smokehouses are surprisingly basic: a chamber for the meat suspended above a smoldering fire with enough distance to keep the temperature low and steady. The key is maintaining the right temperature range, 80 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit for true cold smoking that preserves without cooking. Smoke management is crucial for successful preservation. What begins as a properly controlled fire can quickly produce billowing clouds if the airflow isn't regulated correctly. Even experienced Amish smokers occasionally generate enough smoke to alarm passing neighbors. The key is starting with small batches until you've mastered the technique. Maintaining consistent temperature and using properly seasoned hardwood produces the best results without turning your backyard into what looks like an emergency scene, something local fire departments certainly appreciate. Drying methods. Jerky might be a popular snack today, but for the Amish, dried beef represents serious food storage. The distinction between jerky and dried beef isn't just semantic. They're fundamentally different preparations. Jerky typically consists of thin strips marinated in seasonings, while traditional Amish dried beef involves larger cuts treated with salt before drying. The end products serve different purposes: jerky for quick energy, dried beef for long-term sustenance. Creating properly dried beef requires precise conditions. The magic happens between 75 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit with humidity between 20 to 30%. Too humid and mold becomes a risk. Too dry and the beef becomes brittle rather than pleasantly chewy. The Amish achieve these conditions in dedicated drying houses or rooms, often with simple ventilation systems that require no electricity. Weather plays a crucial role in the drying process. Rainy days introduce excess moisture into the air, potentially spoiling a batch. When unexpected weather patterns threaten preservation efforts, Amish families adapt quickly, sometimes moving drying meat to alternative locations or temporarily using gentle heat sources to maintain ideal conditions. When things go wrong during drying, swift action prevents waste. Early mold can sometimes be remedied by washing the affected area with vinegar and re-drying, though prevention remains preferable. Over-dried beef can be rescued by briefly wrapping in damp cloth to reintroduce minimal moisture. The nutritional density of properly dried beef makes it an exceptional preservation method. A single pound of dried beef contains approximately the same protein as 3 pounds of fresh meat, making it an efficient way to store nutrition for winter months. This concentrated food source requires minimal storage space compared to other preservation methods, and when properly prepared, can remain shelf-stable for up to 2 years while maintaining its nutritional value. Canning beef, the Amish way. Safety comes first when canning beef, especially in Amish communities where electricity isn't an option. Pressure canning isn't just a preference, it's a necessity. Without the high temperatures reached in pressure canners, at least 240 degrees Fahrenheit, botulism spores can survive and produce deadly toxins. This isn't a place to take shortcuts. The versatility of canned beef might surprise those unfamiliar with the technique. Once properly processed, the meat becomes incredibly tender, perfect for quick stews, casseroles, or sandwiches. Amish families rely on these ready-to-eat proteins during busy harvest seasons when cooking time is limited. A jar can be opened and served in minutes, making it the original fast food. Preparation saves valuable time during the actual canning process. Amish cooks often dedicate an entire day to beef canning, working as a family unit. The meat is cut into uniform chunks, seared to develop flavor, and packed into sterilized jars with minimal liquid. The pressure canning process then cooks the meat while creating an airtight seal. Proper storage extends shelf life considerably. Canned beef should be kept in cool, dark places and regularly inspected for signs of spoilage. The Amish typically store their jars in root cellars or specially built pantries where temperatures remain stable year-round. Under optimal conditions, home canned beef can safely last 2 to 5 years. As Amish home canners often say, 5 minutes too short in the canner means 5 days in bed with food poisoning. Their beef and gravy mixtures, pressure canned with onions and a touch of pepper, create meals ready faster than any drive-thru, with flavors that make modern convenience foods taste like cardboard in comparison. In the world of food preservation, few methods combine the safety, convenience, and flavor retention of properly pressure-canned beef, which explains why this technique has remained a cornerstone of Amish food security for generations. Fermentation and cultured preservation. Few preservation methods trigger more raised eyebrows than fermentation. The very idea of controlled spoilage sounds contradictory. How can spoiling food make it last longer? Yet this ancient method has provided nutritious stored food for centuries, and many Amish families keep this tradition alive. The science behind fermented beef preservation relies on beneficial bacteria outcompeting harmful microbes. The right brine solution allows specific bacteria, primarily lactobacillus, to convert sugars into lactic acid when meat is submerged. This increasing acidity creates an environment too hostile for dangerous bacteria to survive, effectively preserving the meat while developing complex flavors. Maintaining starter cultures requires careful attention. Many Amish households keep mother cultures alive for decades, using small portions to initiate new batches. These cultures contain precisely the right bacterial balance, passed down through generations. Each family's fermented beef has a slightly unique flavor profile based on their specific bacterial strains. Before refrigeration became commonplace, most Americans were familiar with fermented meat products. Summer sausage, country ham, and certain salamis all rely on fermentation processes. By the 1950s, electric refrigeration had largely replaced these traditional methods in mainstream America, though the Amish continued preserving these techniques. The smell during fermentation proves challenging for modern noses. As one Amish preserver quipped, "The nose complains, but the mouth rejoices." This explains why many Amish families designate specific outbuildings for fermentation projects, keeping peace in the household while creating these flavorful preserved meats. The powerful odors during active fermentation eventually subside, leaving behind beef with a tangy, complex flavor that's truly worth the temporary olfactory discomfort. After all, as another Amish saying goes, good things come to those who can hold their breath. Root cellars and natural cooling. Buried partially underground and typically built into hillsides, traditional root cellars remain essential features on Amish properties. These simple structures harness Earth's natural insulation to maintain steady temperatures between 32 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, perfect for preserving meat and produce without electrical refrigeration. What modern homeowners might view as primitive technology, the Amish recognize as reliable infrastructure that never fails during power outages. Creating an effective cool storage space doesn't require extensive construction skills. The key elements include proper drainage, ventilation, and thermal mass. Many root cellars feature gravel floors for drainage, paired with ventilation pipes that allow warm air to escape while introducing cooler air. Stone or concrete walls provide thermal mass, absorbing temperature fluctuations and maintaining stability. Monitoring temperature and humidity without electronic gadgets may seem challenging to outsiders, but Amish families use simple tools. Traditional thermometers and hygrometers provide basic readings, while experienced root cellar keepers learn to read subtle signs. When mushrooms start growing on the walls, humidity is too high. When stored apples begin shriveling, it's too dry. These observational skills replace the need for digital monitoring systems. Seasonal considerations determine how the space is used. During fall and winter, temperatures naturally remain ideal. Summer presents more challenges, requiring limited access and early morning usage to prevent warming. Many Amish families schedule their beef processing for cooler months when natural refrigeration works most effectively. As one Amish farmer humorously noted, "A good root cellar is like a stubborn mule. It does exactly what you need without ever changing its mind about the temperature." This reliability explains why these subterranean storage spaces have remained unchanged for centuries, while modern refrigeration technologies come and go. For families serious about food security and self-sufficiency, few investments offer better returns than a well-constructed root cellar, providing decades of maintenance-free cold storage while consuming absolutely no energy. Lard and fat preservation. The simple act of submerging meat in fat creates an almost magical preservation environment. Without oxygen, bacteria cannot grow. It's basic science that the Amish have utilized for generations to store beef without refrigeration. This method effectively creates an airtight seal, protecting the meat inside from exposure to air and the microbes it carries. Rendering fat properly requires patience and attention to detail. Amish families typically collect beef fat throughout the year, storing it until enough accumulates for a rendering session. The fat is cut into small pieces and heated slowly over low heat until it liquefies completely. The clear golden liquid is then carefully strained to remove any particles that could introduce spoilage. Choosing the right container makes a significant difference in how long fat-preserved meat lasts. Traditional Amish kitchens use stoneware crocks or glass jars with tight-fitting lids. These materials don't react with the fat and provide excellent seals. The most important factor is ensuring the meat remains completely submerged. Any exposure to air creates a potential spoilage point. This preservation technique played a crucial role in American frontier expansion. When Lewis and Clark embarked on their famous expedition in 1804, they carried significant quantities of meat preserved in fat, often called potted meat. This protein source remained edible through their multi-year journey and provided essential calories during winter months. Today's processed meats pale in comparison to this traditional method. Many modern potted meat products contain more additives than actual meat. I once checked the ingredient list on a popular canned meat spread and needed a chemistry degree to understand half the components. Meanwhile, the Amish version contains exactly 2 ingredients: meat and fat. Sometimes simpler really is better. Storage rotation systems. First in, first out isn't just a modern inventory concept, it's been the backbone of Amish food management for centuries. Their systematic approach to rotating preserved foods ensures nothing goes to waste, and families maintain access to safe, high-quality proteins throughout the year. This method doesn't require fancy technology, just consistent application of common sense. Clear labeling prevents confusion when dozens of similar-looking preserved items fill storage shelves. Amish families typically mark each container with critical information: what cut of beef, preservation method used, and most importantly, the date it was processed. Some households use simple color coding systems that allow even young children to understand which foods should be used first. The changing seasons guide rotation decisions in most Amish households. Spring cleaning often includes a thorough inventory of winter stores, using up older preserved meats before summer processing begins. Beef preserved the previous fall gets priority during spring and early summer meals, creating space for the upcoming preservation season. Planning prevents the waste that plagues modern households. The average American family throws away approximately 30% of the food they purchase, while Amish communities typically waste less than 5%. This remarkable difference comes from their methodical approach to food storage and usage. Nothing is forgotten at the back of a refrigerator because everything has its designated place and time. The consequences of poor rotation can be both financially and culinarily disappointing. A perfectly preserved jar of beef pushed to the back of the shelf is essentially money sitting unused until it eventually expires. As one Amish preserver puts it, forgotten food is no different than throwing dollars straight into the compost pile. Their meticulous rotation systems ensure that $75 worth of carefully processed beef never languishes in storage while newer products are consumed first, a practical wisdom that makes both economic and gastronomic sense. Preserving different cuts. Different beef cuts require customized preservation approaches, a principle deeply understood in Amish communities. The fat content, muscle density, and connective tissue all influence how meat responds to preservation methods. What works perfectly for brisket might ruin a tenderloin, making this knowledge essential for successful long-term storage. Matching the right preservation method to each meat quality maximizes both flavor and shelf life. Fattier cuts like chuck and brisket excel with salt preservation or smoking, as their natural fat helps prevent drying while adding flavor. Leaner cuts like round or sirloin often benefit from brining before drying, adding necessary moisture to prevent them from becoming too tough during the preservation process. The Amish have developed ingenious solutions for traditionally tough cuts. Less tender portions like shank or neck transform through proper fermentation or canning, which break down connective tissues and convert them from challenging to delicious. These economical cuts, often discarded in modern kitchens, become valuable protein sources when properly preserved. Premium sections receive special treatment to maintain their quality. Tenderloin and ribeye, cuts too valuable to risk with experimental methods, are typically preserved using proven techniques like controlled dry aging or careful smoking. The Amish approach wastes nothing while respecting the unique qualities of each cut. The economics of match preservation can be remarkable. Those tough-looking chunks at the butcher counter, the ones shaped like Nevada that cost half the price of premium cuts, often produce better jerky than expensive options when properly brined and smoked. As one Amish preserver quipped, "The cheap cuts just need a little more conversation before they're ready to cooperate." Understanding these relationships between cut and technique can reduce meat preservation costs by up to 40% while actually improving the quality of the final product. Seasoning variations. Regional differences in flavor preferences become immediately apparent when sampling preserved beef from different Amish communities. Families in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania typically favor simpler seasonings with light notes of pepper and cloves. Meanwhile, Amish settlements in Indiana often incorporate more robust blends featuring garlic and sometimes even a touch of sweetness from maple sugar. These variations aren't random. They reflect generations of refinement based on local ingredients and cultural influences. Balancing flavor with preservation effectiveness requires careful consideration. Certain spices, including garlic, cloves, and ginger, contain natural antimicrobial compounds that enhance preservation while adding distinctive tastes. The Amish understand this dual benefit, often including these ingredients not just for flavor, but for their functional properties. Too much salt might extend shelf life, but creates inedible products, while insufficient salt risks spoilage. Finding the perfect middle ground becomes an art form passed between generations. Creating signature beef products gives Amish families a source of pride and sometimes additional income. Many communities have become known for specific preserved meats, whether it's a special jerky recipe or uniquely flavored dried beef. These specialties often feature at community gatherings and represent family traditions maintained across centuries. Anyone can replicate these flavor profiles with simple ingredients found in most kitchens. Basic salt curing receives tremendous enhancement from black pepper, bay leaves, or brown sugar. The key lies in consistent measurement and thorough distribution of seasonings throughout the meat. As one Amish preserver warns with a wink, measure your cayenne with a teaspoon, not a tablespoon, unless you're trying to cure the meat and clear sinuses at the same time. This wisdom comes from generations of careful recipe refinement where precision matters. A single measurement error can transform a family favorite into what Amish communities call dragon breath jerky, a creation that ensures both long-term preservation and plenty of personal space at community gatherings. The delicate balance of flavors demonstrates how preservation techniques evolved not just for function, but for culinary enjoyment that turns necessity into tradition. Summer heat. Preservation challenges. August separates the skilled preservationists from the lucky ones, as Amish elders say while demonstrating their summer beef preservation techniques. Hot weather creates significant obstacles to safe meat storage, but these challenges have pushed Amish communities to develop ingenious adaptations that remain effective even in the warmest months. Monitoring temperature becomes critical when summer heat threatens preservation efforts. Without electronic thermometers, the Amish rely on traditional methods to assess conditions. They've developed an intuitive understanding of their storage environments, recognizing danger signs like condensation on walls or acceleration in fermentation processes. Many families maintain dedicated temperature diaries, tracking seasonal patterns year after year to anticipate problematic periods. Processing meat strategically during early morning hours takes advantage of naturally cooler temperatures. Many Amish families begin butchering well before dawn during summer months, completing all cutting, salting, and initial preservation steps before the heat of the day arrives. This timing significantly reduces the risk of bacterial growth during the critical first stages of preservation. Natural cooling methods demonstrate remarkable effectiveness when implemented properly. Underground storage areas maintain temperatures 10 to 15 degrees cooler than surface readings. Water immersion, placing sealed meat containers in continuously flowing springs or cool well water, creates naturally refrigerated environments without electricity. These techniques have preserved beef safely for generations, even during record-breaking heat waves. The consequences of ignoring seasonal timing can be memorably unpleasant. Attempting to salt cure beef during a week of 95-degree weather typically results in an aroma that can only be described as somewhere between gym socks and biological warfare. This explains why Amish preservationists maintain such strict seasonal schedules and why they've developed specialized techniques for each time of year. Their calendar-based approach to food preservation represents generations of practical experience that modern conveniences haven't improved upon, just made easier to ignore, often with smelly consequences. Salt and smoke dual preservation method. The combination of salt curing followed by smoking creates what might be the ultimate belt and suspenders approach to beef preservation. This dual method has remained a cornerstone of Amish food storage for generations, creating products that resist spoilage while developing extraordinary flavor profiles. The magic lies in how these techniques complement each other, with each addressing potential weaknesses of the other. Timing between stages can make or break the final product. The Amish typically allow salt-cured beef to fully penetrate, usually 1 to 2 weeks depending on thickness, before moving to the smoking phase. This sequencing ensures that preservation compounds reach the meat center before the outer surface is sealed by smoke. Rushing either stage risks creating products with unsafe centers or overly harsh exteriors. Shelf life extends dramatically when both methods are applied correctly. While salt-cured beef might last 6 to 12 months and smoked beef perhaps a similar period, properly executed dual-method preservation can create products that remain safe and delicious for 18 to 24 months without refrigeration. This extended storage capability proved essential for Amish families before modern refrigeration, allowing year-round protein access regardless of butchering schedules. The wood and salt combinations chosen significantly impact both preservation effectiveness and flavor development. Hickory smoke pairs wonderfully with sea salt, creating a robust traditional flavor. Applewood smoke complements brown sugar-enhanced salt cures, producing a milder, slightly sweet product. These pairings have been refined over generations of careful experimentation. The Amish have a saying that roughly translates to, "Preservation requires patience before pride." Wisdom that becomes painfully obvious when someone cuts the salt curing time in half before smoking. The exterior might look perfect, but the center won't be properly preserved. 2 months later, that mistake becomes apparent when cutting into what should have been perfectly preserved beef, only to find an unwelcome surprise that no amount of appetite can overlook. This time-tested combination of preservation methods demands respect for the process, something that centuries of Amish food preservation has refined to an art: honey-glazed preservation. Long before refrigeration became common, Amish families discovered the remarkable preservation powers hidden in a simple jar of honey. This golden liquid does more than sweeten tea. It becomes a powerful shield against bacterial invasion when applied to beef preservation. The natural antibacterial properties of pure honey transform it into a preservation technique that would make modern food scientists marvel. Honey contains hydrogen peroxide and high sugar content that create an environment where bacteria cannot survive. The low moisture and high acidity make it impossible for most microorganisms to grow. Amish preservationists carefully select local, unprocessed honey, understanding that each region's honey brings unique properties to the preservation process. Creating the perfect honey glaze requires precision. The honey gets warmed slightly to make it more spreadable, then carefully brushed onto beef surfaces. Some families incorporate additional spices like cinnamon or cloves, which not only enhance flavor, but provide extra antimicrobial protection. The meat gets completely coated, creating a protective barrier that seals in moisture and prevents oxygen from reaching the surface. Historical records suggest this technique saved countless meals during challenging summers. One story passed down through generations tells of a particularly humid summer in 1923 when traditional preservation methods failed. Families using honey glazing managed to keep their meat safe and delicious when others struggled with spoilage. Herbal rubs and natural preservatives. Wild herbs growing along fence lines and in meadows represent more than just pretty plants for Amish communities. They're a sophisticated natural preservation system. Each herb carries unique properties that fight bacteria, add flavor, and extend the life of preserved beef without a single artificial ingredient. Some herbs work as powerful antimicrobial agents. Thyme contains thymol, a compound that destroys harmful bacteria. Rosemary packs powerful antioxidants that prevent meat from going rancid. Sage offers additional protection, its natural compounds creating an environment where dangerous microorganisms struggle to survive. Gathering these herbs becomes a community activity. Families work together during summer months, collecting and drying herbs that will protect their food through winter. Children learn to identify specific plants, understanding their medicinal and preservation properties. Some communities maintain herb gardens specifically designed to support food preservation efforts. The art of creating preservation blends gets passed down through generations. Each family develops its own unique combination, closely guarded like a secret recipe. Some use a base of dried sage and thyme, adding wild oregano for extra protection. Others incorporate less common herbs like lovage or winter savory, each adding its own layer of protection and flavor. Leather bag storage method. Before plastic and metal containers, leather served as the ultimate food preservation tool for traveling communities. Amish preservation techniques still honor this ancient method. understanding how carefully prepared leather creates a breathable yet protective environment for storing dried beef. The process begins with selecting high-quality leather, typically from cattle or deer. Hides get carefully treated to remove any residual oils that might cause spoilage. Skilled craftsmen create pouches with tight stitching, ensuring no moisture can enter while allowing just enough air circulation to prevent moisture buildup. Leather's natural properties make it an exceptional storage material. The material breathes, preventing condensation that could lead to mold. Its slightly porous nature allows minimal air exchange, which helps prevent meat from becoming completely desiccated. Some families use specific treatments like beeswax coating to enhance the leather's protective capabilities. Historical records show these leather storage methods allowed frontier travelers to carry preserved meat for months. Native American tribes and early settlers developed techniques that the Amish later refined. A well-prepared leather bag could keep dried beef safe and edible through long journeys and harsh conditions, becoming a critical survival tool. Winter freezing techniques. Long winters have always been a test of survival for rural communities, and Amish families have perfected the art of using nature's own refrigerator. When temperatures plummet, they transform the harsh cold into a powerful preservation tool. Building outdoor ice houses becomes more than a technique. It's a carefully orchestrated dance with winter itself. Timing proves critical in winter slaughter practices. Amish farmers wait for the first hard freeze, understanding that consistent below-freezing temperatures provide the perfect natural preservation environment. The moment temperatures drop and stay low, they spring into action. Beef gets butchered quickly, taking advantage of the natural cold that stops bacterial growth in its tracks. Protecting meat from predators becomes as important as the freezing process itself. Elevated storage structures, carefully constructed wooden containers, and strategic placement away from wildlife paths ensure that preserved beef remains safe. Some families use multiple layers of protection, wooden boxes covered with snow, buried in carefully selected locations that maintain steady cold temperatures. Thawing becomes an art form in itself. Unlike modern methods that rely on electric defrosting, Amish techniques involve gradual temperature changes. Meat gets moved to progressively warmer locations, allowing it to return to edible temperatures without losing moisture or quality. Each step is calculated to preserve the beef's flavor and nutritional value. Bone broth preservation. Beyond simple meat storage, Amish communities understand the value of extracting every possible nutrient from their beef. Bone broth represents the ultimate expression of this waste-not philosophy, transforming what many would consider scraps into a nutritional powerhouse that can be preserved for months. The process begins with carefully selected beef bones, typically a mix of marrow bones, knuckles, and some meat remnants. These get roasted first to develop deep flavor, then slowly simmered for hours. Amish families often use large cast iron pots that can maintain a consistent low temperature, allowing collagen, minerals, and nutrients to slowly release into the liquid. Clarification becomes an essential step in long-term preservation. The broth gets carefully strained multiple times, removing any solid particles that could cause spoilage. Some families add a thin layer of rendered fat on top, creating an additional barrier against bacterial growth. The result is a concentrated base that can be stored for months when properly prepared. Nutritional benefits extend far beyond simple preservation. Bone broth contains significant amounts of calcium, magnesium, and amino acids that support overall health. During long winters, this preserved liquid becomes more than just a cooking ingredient. It's a critical source of nutrition that helps communities maintain strength through challenging months. Beeswax sealing method. Beeswax represents one of the most ingenious preservation techniques developed by Amish food experts. This natural substance does more than just seal. It creates an almost impenetrable barrier that keeps beef safe from oxygen and bacterial invasion. Families collect beeswax from local hives, understanding that this golden substance carries powerful protective properties. The sealing process requires careful preparation. Beeswax gets melted slowly, carefully strained to remove any impurities. Beef pieces get thoroughly dried before the sealing begins. Using special dipping techniques, the meat gets completely coated in a thin, even layer of warm beeswax. As the wax cools, it creates an airtight seal that can preserve meat for extended periods. Natural antibacterial properties make beeswax particularly effective. The waxy coating prevents moisture from entering while blocking oxygen that could cause spoilage. Some Amish families add additional protective herbs to the melted wax, incorporating extra preservation compounds into the sealing process. One remarkable story passed through generations tells of a perfectly preserved beef piece discovered in a cellar, sealed with beeswax decades earlier. While most would be skeptical, careful examination proved the meat remained edible, a testament to the incredible preservation powers of this simple, natural technique. The Amish preservation methods reveal a timeless wisdom of working with nature. Their techniques transform beef preservation from a challenge into an art, proving that traditional knowledge can outperform modern conveniences with simplicity, creativity, and respect for food.